Okay. I think did it go, this is now recording?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I'm just gonna get going, and hopefully won't forget that people are in the waiting room. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining this Zoom call. I know there's a billion Zoom calls, and so I really appreciate it. I'm gonna take a few seconds to like set stuff up, and then we're just gonna jump into a conversation. Started off by 7 folks who I've invited to start off the conversation, but hopefully then we can have a discussion about the importance of peer support and advocacy right now. What do I need to make sure I say? I can introduce myself. I'm Jayne Malenfant. I'm from Kapuskasing, Ontario, but I'm now working in Shiwcharran, or so-called Montreal. And I'm a PhD student at McGill, amongst other things. That's probably not the most important thing. And yeah, today we're going to have about 5 to 10 minutes of each person talking about their work, and how it relates to the pandemic, what it looked like before, and what we're all imagining for the future of this work around youth homelessness, child welfare, and experiences of housing precarity. I also want to thank the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation for funding my work and also making it possible to pay folks honorarium to talk with us today, which is important. My work is around youth homelessness and state institutions. I'm part of a 6-person team, 5 of whom have lived experience of housing precarity. So peer work was really integral to what I was doing before this. And it has looked different for me during the pandemic, but has been something that has still been really, really important to, I think, surviving and organizing and my well-being. So yeah, I just wanted to chat about that today. And I'm recording. Question-wise, if people want to put questions in the chat, I will keep track of those. Maybe after each person talks, if you have any clarifying questions, we can do those right away. And if not, we'll kind of tackle them afterwards, and we can all maybe chat together. So this is my very informal, loosey-goosey way of organizing discussions. And yeah, maybe we'll just jump into it. Marcelle, how do you feel about being the first one to talk?
Sure. I'm okay with it. Yeah. So my name is Marcelle. I got to be introduced to Jayne. I think just through at first I didn't even know, but I think you hosted a University of the Streets I guess session, conference, workshop, I don't know how we call them, but it was really nice. And we spoke of like, I think exactly youth protection, participation, and we dabbled a little bit on the theme of homelessness, but that wasn't I think the subject. So I didn't know, but this is the first introduction that I had, and it's really great to be here. And then through work with a little bit Naomi Nichols, I was kind of put in touch with you and realized that we have a lot more in common, even if my lived experience of homelessness is connected to both education and youth protection. There's a lot of overlap, so I just want to say thank you for having me and having all of us. It's really I'm always like really humbled whenever people ask that. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, for sure, I'll share a little bit. So on my end, I'm also at McGill, and I'm doing a research, and I would like to go towards the PhD, but right now I'm finishing the master's bit. But I have a lot of admiration, and I wanted to be a little bit of a testimony to the power that we can have by having peer support and other folks who have gone through similar experiences and pursue education. But right now, I think what I would like to speak the most of is just little ways in which we can support each other. I co-lead with another incredible former youth in care leader, Des Gregoire, the Montreal Youth in Care Alumni Student Association, and she actually provided me with a care package when I was sick during COVID. So that was really recently, not too many, I guess at this point 2 months, and it provided the inspiration that we all need a little bit of care. We all deserve dignity, and especially if we're used to being forgotten and at the margins of society, and more specifically, youth who are living any sort of precarity in terms of housing or in homelessness, I think right now are really, really erased a little bit from the collective consciousness, because we think a little bit more of the older folks who are in the elder care centers, but I think we tend to forget young folks who don't have any place to be at the current time. So what I realized is that it didn't take that much coordination and effort to kind of bring a little bit of light, a little bit of hope, but also uh, attention, and make care packages for folks with love, and go in a place of like, I don't know how to say it without sounding too esoteric, but I feel like asking at times is a big burden, and we always expect it to happen from the people who are already suffering a lot. And so my hope was actually to bring light to a different way of giving that I think peer support actually speaks so much to that. Peer support is not necessarily you're going to take something from me and it's a like a one way thing, you know. It's dynamic, it's a relationship, you know, that you receive and that you give, and that it'll come back like a type of full circle. And that was kind of the idea with those little care packages that we put together. We put 35 together. It was that I know that it was going to provide me so much joy to be able to do something for someone else and get me out of the apocalyptic mindset that the coronavirus has implemented, in all of us. And then at the same time, I wanted to keep and maintain a relationship. So actually Jayne was really helpful with making sure that we would have youth who are already connected to a network or to the work that Jayne is doing or other folks are doing. And then we kept going like this. And then another friend, Émilie La Liberté, connected me to Le Refuge des Jeunes. And then we got to give directly to someone, to Manon, who was, like, I think the director, and just know that we could maintain a contact and not just like give because it kind of gives a certain temporary gratification, but actually build relationships. And I think that if I hadn't lived myself homelessness as a youth coming out of the child welfare system, I would not have thought of thinking of youth in care. And I believe that it informs the practice that I want to see more profusely in more institutional realms as well as academic ones. And yeah, so I think I spoke a little bit enough of that. There's other great organizations such as Care Jeunesse, or even Yes for Humanity, that's more on the youth, like a global youth-led organization that support and kind of encourage peer support and encourage that we take experiential knowledge as valid and as a dignified way of making amends for ways in which the system is failing youth and other populations who are marginalized. Yeah, so that I think that's what I wanted to share today. I hope it's okay.
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much, Marcelle. And I'm sure I invite all of you to share more. I know you're doing so many things during the discussion, but yeah, Charlotte, you wanna get in on this?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a Carleton student. I'm just finishing up my master's. All I have left to do is write in the damn thesis. So I should graduate this September in sociology. I have lived experience of youth homelessness, and for the last 4 years, I've been doing peer research. And one of the things I like about that is introducing myself to young people as a peer researcher. It kind of opens the door for that relationship to continue beyond just that really small, short, kind of superficial research interaction, and the potential for it to last as long. Some of the young people that I met in research, I've known since the day I interviewed them up until today. And like Marcelle was saying, the great thing about the peer relationship is that it's reciprocal. And it's not about just like what I can do for young people, which since COVID, what I have been doing is food delivery and trying to art supplies, anything that could sort of help keep young people inside as much as possible, cigarettes and marijuana, things like that. But throughout that whole time, I've had, youth checking on me too, writing to me, making sure that I'm okay if they don't hear from me for a few days. If they know something, I'm having a personal issue, checking in. And then also, one of the great things that's since, going into university and stuff is something I thought I would never be in that position. But when you are in that position, you get like a lot of respect from like normal people, which is kind of cool. And people have been following the research that I've been doing and the work that we've done as a team, right? Like I always say the youth, and I hate that term because it's so impersonal, but like I'm not going to list off all their names, but there's a group of about 11 of us now who have done things like get together, and in December we raised $30,000 for a scholarship for youth who've experienced homelessness at Carleton University, and we hope to raise that up to 150,000 so that it could include housing and supports and tuition and everything that person might need to succeed. So yeah, we just, in doing all these things in the community as a group of peers with lived experience, we've gained this reputation. So when COVID began and I needed some supplies, art supplies and donations for food, I didn't even really have to ask. I just posted, update my Facebook and my Twitter, and people who follow the youth team and who follow my work, they just started volunteering to give money. So I really haven't had to do much active fundraising to be able to support a bunch of people in the community. And I think it makes people, it's just a really great show of community. Like it's a real collaboration. When you see people that I've met in various different youth serving organizations or not-for-profits or universities, professors, all kind of people just pitching in because they've seen the young people speak in presentations or on videos for United Way, things like that. Because the more we do in the community too, the more opportunities just naturally present themselves. Recently, Catherine McKenna, the federal MP, she offered that the youth team come and speak directly to her and the housing minister. So just the potential is endless.
Thank you, Charlotte. Mickey? You guys are so fast.
Is it my turn already?
Yeah. Those are the fastest like speaking academics ever.
Right. Speed speaking.
All
It should
right.
be a sport.
Okay.
Sorry, just 1 second.
No worries.
I have notes. I don't often have notes.
I also realized that I have some really lovely bios for everyone that I have put somewhere and I can't find them. So I'm sorry, and thank you for introducing yourselves. I know both Charlotte and Marcelle are involved with like different projects, and maybe I can compile some links about them and send them around to folks afterwards.
So anyways, hello everyone. My name is Mickey. I work with Jayne on our project with Dunlarue and McGill. I am a youth with lived experience, and I like to call myself a peer researcher, I guess is the best term for it. I'm just gonna kind of like dive right in. So when Jayne brought up the idea of doing this talk, I was a little confused as to like how I should go about this. I haven't gotten to give a lot of talks. We've done a few and they've all been absolutely wonderful experiences, but I'm still kind of getting my feet wet. And so I asked her to like give me some direction here. And she said, well, how did, like what changed and what do you think needs to change? And so with that in mind, I set out to answer those questions. First things first, in my opinion, everything changed. I think that we can all agree the world is not and cannot be the same as it was December 2019. As for myself, I stopped being just a researcher in my mind, and I decided that I really needed to start adding like real on-the-ground outreach and advocacy work into the mix as well. I started going to bat for friends when they had to deal with shelter with shelters or helping them get welfare paperwork sorted or just anything I could do to be helping out, to be keeping busy. I don't sit still very well. And that brought up a word in my head. It brought up solidarity. And that for me, solidarity has never just meant like cool words and studies and papers. It's also meant like being on the ground. It means direct action and risk taking. So I started to plot it in my head. Well, what were some things that I think, you know, like I could be doing and that others like could be doing, or just generally things I was already seeing happen throughout a lot of the pandemic. I was sleeping rough outside and camped out in the woods, and so I kind of got a little window back into what things are like now. I hadn't been on the streets for a fair few years, and some things have changed. One thing I definitely saw that I think is the most important to highlight is that street outreach really does save lives. People there on the ground, walking around, handing out snacks. It almost seemed to become like this popular pastime for people in a better life position. I can't count the amount of gift bags that would just appear next to where I was sleeping, or that people would like walk up, motion to me, and just kind of leave in a rock somewhere for me to go grab. I think it really highlighted the fact that we can't like things need to be done, and they need to be done in the now. And I think people often struggle with finding things that they can do in the now, and just doing things like what I've just said, I think are really going to get us far. Another thing I noticed, basic income that actually covers the basics can make immediate changes to a situation. To highlight, I have some friends in Toronto who are still camped out in a tent city waiting for housing, but at the same time, I have friends who got their benefit money and are now housed up and hopefully looking to stay that way. And these are people who were not in that position before at all. I think the government has shown that it understands that money talks, and money in people's pockets makes life better. So I'm sorry. And so going forward, I definitely think that's something I think that my work at least is going to be focused on, is how do we make things like this come about right now? Because they need to. And it's kind of highlights my, but the final point, that we need to choose solidarity. We need to choose standing together right now. No more talking about it. Let's do it, or we will be given death. Right now, as a society, I see us standing at a crossroads, and things are looking very dark. In New York, they were digging mass graves. When Indigenous people on the prairies reached out for aid in communities that were already being severely neglected, the government couldn't be bothered to send them much more than body bags. I think this highlights that now, like more than ever, we've started to sequester ourselves in these little bubbles, just hoping to stay safe out of our fear. And not only that, it's made us grow comfortable. In fact, it seems to almost be like creating a level of overcomfort that people are starting now to scream out for the same eases of life to come back, damned anybody they see as beneath them. I think right now we have a very fleeting chance to change that, to remind people that no, right now we need to be coming together. We need to be standing together on this land that we stole and fix things, because if we don't, our gilded cages are going to end up being where we are buried. There won't be anything more. I think the only way to stop that is by direct pressure on our local elected officials for lasting changes, for legislation that is humane, for well-planned and well delivered funding that comes now, not maybe 2025, now. Sorry, I started to rant a bit. I wrote this in kind of an angry mood, and so reading it back is putting me there. But in the end, I'd like to close by just leaving you with this. We are embroiled in a Kafkaesque nightmare. I want to let you all know right now that I'm not going to shame the efforts of those who have the courage to make a stand. anything you do it's got to be better than nothing. It has to be. I refuse to believe that it isn't. I hope that if anything, this short, like, little blurb that I've written out here in anger, ranted at you all, puts a taste for war in your mouth, because I think that nothing but absolute resistance to the mounting pressures and changes and rot that we see in our society, nothing less will save us. I'm just going to kind of wrap it up here. I'd like to thank Jayne for hosting this. I'd like to thank all of our wonderful speakers who've already spoken before me and who are going to speak after me. And I'd like to thank you all for listening. And thank you for your solidarity.
Don't leave though, Mickey. We need more of that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that that's really important also to remember this. Like,
if anyone had any clarifying questions and I still have some time, I'm locked and ready to answer questions.
I think there's just a lot of like, good support for what you're throwing down.
Awesome.
And yeah, let's talk more about this for sure. Reshma, you want to jump in?
Sure. I don't know how I can follow that. But yeah, so I'm Reshma, and I use pronouns she, her. I currently reside in Toronto, and one of the key things that got me into advocacy and also doing peer work was mainly my child welfare involvement. While I was living in a system that did not show any care, even though that's what it's known for, you're a youth from care, you're a young person from care. Something that made me appreciate a part of my child welfare experience, though, was to realize that while the system itself did not care, I did have a select few individuals who chose to show me care. And that kind of pushed me on the path to where I am today, where I wanted to be someone who someone could find care in. And that's kind of why I wanted to become a peer mentor and become a peer support person, mainly because all the barriers that I faced didn't really lead me to a path that would allow me to be some great social worker. Post-secondary and social institutions like schools was not a place that I found myself fitting in well or doing well or achieving a high honor roll. So I wanted to find a way how I can still be there for someone, but in a more tangible way, because I think oftentimes, and I've witnessed this while being an employee, but also receiving services, in a lot of community resource agencies, oftentimes we forget that we work with real people. Oftentimes we forget that the clients that we have or the people that walk in our door are actual human beings. These are tangible lives that have severe consequences based on the actions and the words that we choose to show to them. And because of that, I wanted to step into the advocacy piece. As a young person, as a teenager, and then now in my young adult years, oftentimes my voice was degraded because I didn't have a diploma, I didn't have a degree, I didn't have any of these tangible academic achievements in life. So what I had to say didn't really matter because there was no title after it. There was no MSW or psychologist or PhD or anything of the sort. So advocacy for me became a very big thing in the sense where I needed to learn how to be my own self-advocate, and I needed to recognize where, despite being a person of color, where are some privileges that I might hold that I can pull strength from that? Because at the end of the day, if we don't know our own social location, we can't really do much or move forward in an equitable way. And that's kind of where all my advocacy work stemmed from. And it led me to the point where right now I do community work in Toronto with various different organizations. One of the key ones that I work with is a program called Free to Be with Wood Green Community Services. And that's them to be a housing first initiative for young people who've aged out of the child welfare system. Because we believe so strongly that without housing and without safe and stable housing, there's not really much that you can do with any goals you choose to set out for the rest of your lives, because without safe and stable housing, well, guess what? You can't really maintain a proper job. You can't really work on your mental health. You can't work on your physical health, get into good eating habits, or any of the other things that would help someone move on from survival to living now. And doing this work over the years, it's made me realize that a lot of times we need to remember that it's the system that's the issue and not the individual people that work in the system. And sometimes I need to remind myself, because I'll have a young person come up to me and say, XYZ is so terrible, and I'll readily agree with them, but then I realize, no, oftentimes we behave a certain way because we feed into the policies and the capitalism that's going on around us. And we need to figure out a good balance of how we can break the system and break the rules while at the same time still be connected to the resources we have to provide for other young people and young adults and the people that are within the communities we work in. And unfortunately, due to COVID, a lot of that work has been taken back to online resources. And despite me living in Toronto, which a lot of people have the assumption that it's very accessible to things like computers and cell phones and laptops and whatnot, or internet, it's actually not, because a lot of young people that I've been working with and other peers, they rely on public services like the libraries or Tim Hortons or McDonald's to get access to their Wi-Fi and internet. And with COVID and the closure of that, well, these buildings are closed. These buildings, the powers are shut off. They don't have access to anything. And it's trying to find a safe way to keep me safe and them safe while maintaining interaction and connection. So some of the work that I've been doing has kind of been a lot of it doing grocery deliveries or sending e-transfer from our donation funds to kind of help young people figure out how to deal with access and resources while at the same time trying to keep, I hate to use this word, but try to keep sane. Because right now we're seeing in our society, there's a push to be productive. There's a push to try new recipes, go find a new hobby, go do something new, go try out this new recipe or whatever the case. And a lot of the work has been around counseling to be like, if you want to spend 5 days in a row not doing anything, that's okay. And it's like almost that constant reminder that just because we have free time, that doesn't mean we have free time in our mental capacity to do these things. And being a part of this experience of this panel has been very eye-opening to me of the different work that can be done, especially surrounding homelessness, and how we can interact with other individuals in a time where we need to remember to also keep ourselves safe while trying to help maintain the safety of other folks.
Thank you so much, Reshma. Yeah, I think we're going to have a really great conversation. There's already some comments in the chat. Avery, did you want to share next? If you're on.
Yeah, both good. Well, my name's Avery. I'm a youth with the lived homelessness experience. Why I got involved with youth advocacy is because I was in care and I had my fair share of mental health problems and like being homeless and stuff. And there were very few good people I connected with in those times. So I think I wanted to give back to the people that helped me and just, be able to be that person to other kids. And what I'm going to be talking about today, though, is I started a group during the beginning of COVID for, I live in Ottawa, for my community, for like low-income families, single moms, single dads, people that like youth that live on their own, anyone that just needed help. We were collecting like food donations. We were delivering them. So just like trying to help as many people as we could in our city. And why I started it is just I myself am low income, and ever since COVID, it's been a lot more of a struggle. So I just thought about how many people, who were in my shoes or even worse, and I wanted to do something about it. Like it's not right for people to struggle, especially like this is before CERB was coming up. This is before anyone was getting financial help, and a lot of families just all of a sudden went from having like two people working or one person working to nothing, and they were freaking out. So um, I just wanted to do what I could, and um, sorry, I have like a list here. What the things were like before this for me were pretty boring. I didn't really have much to do. I was in school um, that I babysit a lot, and that was pretty much it. And but now when I started doing it, it got like pretty crazy. It went from like being about 50 people on the first day to by the end of the first couple weeks, there were 500 people in the group, and it got like crazy. Charlotte was helping me do deliveries. Jen was helping me do deliveries. A few people were, but one thing I found was pretty crazy is that most of the people that were helping were other low-income people. One of my very few people that actually like did drives to do deliveries happened to be a 9 month old or 8 month pregnant woman, and her mother who was about 50 or almost 60, and my mom who's in her 50s. So like I thought it was crazy that that just the only people that were willing to help were other people that were struggling. Like it blew my mind that no one who was a little bit better off thought, oh, I can help, but it was all low income people giving what they could, and I thought that was pretty crazy. It so how that took an effect on my mental health was it was pretty easy in the beginning. It wasn't hard, but over time people were some people were kind of abusing it, and some people started sending me like grocery lists and being like, hey, I'll send you $200 if you can do my groceries for me and drop them off to my house. And I had to explain them like, no, that's not what this is. It's you know, it's a food bank pretty much that we're just, because most of them were shut down in our city, so we were trying to give people what we could, but it just got a little crazy. Like people were trying to ask for like food delivery. People were starting to send me full grocery lists and ask, oh well, can you get these for me, like, and just expecting to me to go spend $200, and that's not how it was. It was kind of like we give what we can, and for people that really needed help, that was enough. That was like they were really grateful for that. But there was a lot of people that just, I don't know, just kind of started to really, really abuse it. So the page is still up and running. I kind of had to step back a little bit um, because it was just getting so overwhelming. So now it's still up and running, but it's kind of changed a little bit. So before I was I was making care packages, and either Charlotte, my mom, or Jen, or someone would go do like 20 runs in one day across the city to go do deliveries. But now it's kind of like someone will post if they need help, and they'll post their area, and then people in their area reach out to them and help them. And I find that's working pretty cool. So it was cool watching, like, I was taking care of everything with like a few other people. Like my boyfriend helped me a lot too. Like our whole kitchen was just like a food bank. But it's really cool to see, like, even when I stepped back, that there were a lot of good people that kept it going and kept on helping their community even without like the original person who started it there. So that made me really happy to see. Um, Something I would like to see differently would definitely be, like, there was a lot of people that would like reach out and like offer, oh hey, I can deliver, or I have a huge thing of food to help, and they would like post it on the group, but then when I went to go message them, it was nothing. And that was, I would just like to see, like if you can help, that's awesome. But like if you're not sure or if you're just saying you can, like I think that's one thing people shouldn't be doing. I also just think that there should be more groups like that, like not just in my city, but everywhere. Like there should, and it shouldn't be low income people helping it. Like I think the government should be doing something like this. I don't know, like something, someone that has like something or someone that has money, because it's really hard for like a group of like low income people to try and support like 500 people. Like that's a lot. So I think like there should be more, like there's a lot of food banks are closed right now. Like I know near me there's only one food bank that's open, and I'm in a pretty low income neighborhood, so there's a lot of people that need help here, and like it's just crazy to me that, like, it's such a big city like Ottawa and such a hard time. I get that, like social distancing and stuff, but grocery stores are open, and I feel like there
Shut
could
up,
be a way
bitch.
that they could keep food banks open. But um yeah, that's like pretty much mostly what I have to say. But I just really enjoy helping people, so I just thought it was the right thing to do in this time. A lot of more people needed help.
Shut up.
So
Ah, sorry, Avery.
it's okay.
All right. How do I kick people off?
You have to click all.
Yeah. What a bummer. Okay. We'll just try to continue on without anyone being a dick. Thank you, Avery. Yeah, fingers crossed. I guess it's good I have a waiting room. Okay. That's the first time I get that. All right, Marty, you want to try? And
I thought I was hallucinating.
Good
I was
job.
like, what?
Glad that we weren't.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
weird when you hear about something that happens, right? Like a pandemic, you know? Like,
Whatever.
no, that was great.
Yeah, totally. All right, Marty.
All right.
Try to stop that from happening again.
Approach hi, Mardi. I'm good with any pronouns. Nice to see some familiar folks and some new folks. And yeah, if you know me, then you know I'm a bit all over the place, not scattered, but scattered in the best sense. And so, where do I start? I've been hearing such good things. It's made me question what I want to bring to this, and I've been actively reflecting while everyone's been speaking. So I think first and foremost, there were some really good comments about the difficulty of being homeless. And if I could ground that in like some real life, I have lived experience as well. However, mine started when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and now for context, I'm 26 as of a month ago. And I've been reflecting because I think I've only just exited homelessness, if that makes any sense, in the last few years, which just goes to show how long these trajectories actually are to leave, even with all the best outcomes that you could have. So it doesn't matter if you're getting A's in school or if you have a full-time job, it can be extremely difficult to exit these situations amidst something like this. So what do? I'm a peer specialist. I work for a bunch of agencies in Toronto, including Off Community Services, CAMH, and I've been doing some volunteering with a place called Ample Labs as well, which is really cool. They have an app called Chalmers, which helps to resource folks right now based in Toronto who need like basic needs access right away. And some of the work I've been doing at Ample Labs has been really interesting because I'm working with a UX group, so user research, and in healthcare, I don't think we really explore that a lot, so I'm learning everything fresh. And one of the things that we were looking at is these caremongering groups, as a lot of you have been talking about. And so with these caremongering groups, what was emphasized was a few things. The first one that I heard right when this started, which really perplexed me and challenged me, was never waste a crisis. And I had to think about that. What does that mean, never waste a crisis? It's because we get to see all the ways that our system has failed. That's what I took from it. And so if you're looking around and you see that we have a crisis because everything has imploded on itself, this tells us that there's room for change. And now we can basically ask for anything because they kind of have to give it to us in more ways than they have before. So that was the first one. And the second observation that I had was about resources and people assuming needs. So as people with lived experience, a lot of us know what this is like from a systemic lens, right? To have people assume your needs and not include you as part of a conversation that has to do with you. However, um, in terms of resourcing people right now, I think an interesting reflection is to say at the beginning when it was winter, people's needs are going to change now that it's summer, and especially those in the homeless population. So one of the things that we were observing was that everyone said, oh, we need cell phones, cell phones, cell phones, cell phones. And when you actually started to look, it wasn't that people needed actual physical cell phones, they needed cell phone chargers. And then on top of that, they needed places to actually charge their phone. So you see that it becomes a lot more deep rooted. And as we kept searching, mostly in May, like some recent findings was that I see a question, caremongering. So caremongering, my understanding of it is when you don't have a community resource to go to that's formalized, these groups come out and they're the ones that are doing delivery everywhere. They're the ones that are baking pies and dropping them off, or asking people what they need. That's what a caremongering group would be. And so sometimes we get it wrong, of course, and it's well intentioned, but it is really interesting that if we were to, as a sector, start to monitor what people need in terms of their resources, I think you would see a shift. So something that started as it started to get warmer is people stopped asking for computer parts, people stopped asking for laptop parts. In the sites that I was looking at, and everything changed to, oh, I need a bicycle, I'd like some planting materials. And this doesn't have to be mainstream, but it was an interesting observation because I feel as COVID happened, normally I would be right in the thick of things, but this time I had personal issues that came up around the same time that the pandemic started. So I actually had to step back from my role. And obviously the world shut down, so I stepped back from the world. So I've been in this observing position for the last few months. And it's been quite fascinating to see some people are doing so much better now that society is shut down. And what does that mean? It means that they actually feel settled in themselves, um, which is fascinating that it couldn't happen when all the systems were in place. Another observation that I had was there's been, and I want to be careful with this, uh, in our healthcare system, I think how it interacts with homelessness right now has emphasized how much more we need to put into female identified health in general. You're hearing a lot about safety, you're hearing a lot about domestic issues. And in my case, like having to actually go to a hospital and thinking about, you know, people who may be having their first child, and how they have to be alone through that. I think it raises a lot of questions, and we have an opportunity here to point that out to say, under any other circumstances, this would be wrong, you know, and even now we all consider this to be wrong. So COVID has definitely been an opportunity to see what it's like to not be in the thick of things. I think one of the major changes that I've experienced is that I'm an entrepreneur as well as a peer. And my business is called Lived Experience Lab. So here's a shameless plug that is relevant to this, of course. But what I'm trying to do is create a community. And a question that I always had was, how do we contact people that are remote? How do we start to actually use technology in a way where we can mobilize research, and especially research in the homelessness sector, where we have a huge lack of long-term, like longitudinal studies because we can't keep up with people. How can these things all come together? And so my hope with this time of COVID and the little bit of research I've been doing and observing is that the people in power will see that there are a lot more opportunities now to try things that we've never tried before. So with some of us know about making the shift, the research funding And one of the projects I'm on called the Housing Outreach Project Collaborative, we have that funding. And when we were looking at the proposal again, one of the questions we were asked was, how can we use technology better? And in my own research, looking at how to do recruitment, I saw that there are actually innovations happening where people, unlike Zoom, unfortunately, can create more secure sites for people to have their information and for researchers to connect with participants while still being anonymous. And I thought this is like, wow, how come we're not utilizing this? All that to say that pre-COVID, I think we all really like getting out to see each other, getting out to network and to see what's up. And in that time, since now it's during COVID, I guess it's presently COVID, taking an observational role has been very powerful to see where the gaps are and where we can utilize this crisis that's happening to mobilize things that we just haven't been paying enough attention to. I think it's really incredible that, for example, in the city of Toronto, all of a sudden, all this funding and all this housing was made just because of COVID. And it's something that for the last year, being a part of the Toronto Alliance on Homelessness, we've been pushing for. And it took this. It's sad that it had to take this, but I think our responsibility now is to make sure that this doesn't get forgotten, because it's really easy in the modern age to have a trendy issue that quickly goes by the wayside as soon as the next one comes up. Sorry, that was like really all over the place. I was feeling so inspired and I had notes and I took them out and but I appreciate the space and all the work that everyone's doing. It's quite incredible to hear how people are taking it upon themselves personally to go make change, and I really commend you for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marty. That was great. We'll wrap up with Stu. Yeah, you got it?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm going now? Okay. I'm Stu. I do like a bunch of lived experience, like advocacy and speaking and peer support stuff. One of the things I'm more proud of is that I'm like involved with this Ottawa U like legal like program called Street Smarts, which teaches like legal rights to like marginalized youth and does workshops and stuff. And I'm like advising on that at times, even though I really just have like crash course experience with the law. So at first when I was thinking about like what I'd talk about, I thought like I hadn't really been doing anything, because I wasn't really like producing any physical results. I wasn't getting people food. I wasn't doing that. And then I realized like I've been doing a lot of like emotional support that's like a lot less tangible and like often more underappreciated. And like I've been struggling a lot, like personally, and I've heard a lot of people like have a lot of struggles, and these are some of the issues that people I know and support have been facing. Depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, like increased risk or increased self-harm, relapse, overdose, withdrawal, increased substance use, domestic violence and emotional abuse, people sleeping in the woods because they're immune compromised and don't want to go die in the shelters, further marginalization of subsistence sex workers, like because there's fines for having people over at your place and stuff like that. Like it puts them more at risk, basically. People can't see their kids. People who are in hospital and like potentially dying, like can't come there, like have their families come visit them, like for non-COVID related stuff too. And it's like affecting like both halves, like the people who can't go see them and the people who are alone in hospital. People having difficulty getting their medication, like a lot of medications, I guess, are produced like somewhere like overseas, and there's like been issues with shipping between. I don't really understand that part, but they've been having difficulties. People are scared to call 911 in the case of an OD because they don't want to get the fines, which is like kind of fucked up, but like, the Good Samaritan Act doesn't cover that. And of course, people are isolated. And sometimes I feel like there's not really anything to do about it, but I've been doing a lot of the same stuff as before the pandemic, I guess. You know, checking in on people, messaging them, meeting up with people and watch them like use to make sure they don't overdose, and naloxoning them if they need it, like trying to connect people with like resources. Like I've like been reaching out to like I guess like other service providers of like drop-ins and stuff like that, like art group, and like getting the participants like connected with Charlotte, making deliveries and stuff like that. I've been shitty at social distancing when my role is like supporting people. I've been meeting up with people. I've been hugging them when they need it. I've like touched people's face, checked them for like a broken nose. Like I've been letting panhandlers like pet my dog and just like talking with them. Like, cause I feel like, I don't know, like a lot of people are like, you know, really like they aren't giving anybody else their 6 feet, but then all of a sudden they go by a homeless person and like, for the first time ever, they happen to see them. They exist, but like now they're like a threat or something. People might say that's like irresponsible, but coronavirus isn't the only thing that kills. Isolation, depression, and overdose can kill as well, and many are at much higher risk of dying from that than they are of COVID. There's a lot of talk about housing the homeless and so they can social distance and stuff, but I feel like a lot of the discourse surrounding it is treating them as a public health risk rather than members of the public who are at risk in a health crisis. And there's been talk, like someone told me they were maybe planning on putting like a lot of the homeless people in arenas here with like, I guess like cots like 6 feet apart, if I've seen like pictures of other places where they've done this, which like, I'm not a doctor, but like, I'm pretty sure that's not the greatest social distancing kind of thing. And in other places, they've been using like arenas as morgues because they're able to like freeze the ice and keep like a large area frozen. So like if I was homeless right now, I would definitely not go to an arena. I'd be hiding out in the woods. And like a lot of shelters have been like increasing infection rates. Like, so I'd say like, and they've been evicting like tent cities and stuff and forcing people to go in like less safe conditions, which I don't think is right. A lot of people like saying we should house them in hotels, or they are, but it's a little too late for many already and fails to account for people's needs. Like, do you think you qualify for CERB when you panhandle, when you do street level sex work or sell drugs? How are you going to feed yourself on less than $400 basic needs in a hotel with a mini fridge and a microwave, if you're lucky to have that? Like, and without rent freeze and rent forgiveness, the housing crisis will only get worse in the future. These and other issues, like deliberately allowing properties to fall into disrepair, criminal record checks, overpriced rent, and too little social assistance, put us all at risk. It's ridiculous that CERB for one person is $2,000 a month, but a family of 3 on welfare or a single person on disability in Ontario are lucky to get $1,200 a month. Stuff I want for the future is I've been kind of inspired by like Avery's group and the fact that like a lot of people have like they've been like remodeling, they've been getting new furniture and stuff like that, and all the thrift stores are closed. So a lot of the stuff that like, I know I rely heavily on like the thrift store. Like I was like waiting to get a ride with like that week, like the week all the lockdown and everything shut down. I had like my Salvation Army furniture vouchers. I was all like, yeah, I'm getting some furniture. And then like, nah. So I just got like Rubbermaid bins for my clothes on a shelf instead of like an actual dresser. And it kind of annoys me. I got to look at it like pretty much all day I'm inside. And I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. So I wanted to like fill the gap of that with like an online group where people post the stuff that they need, the stuff that they don't need, and like just we have drivers facilitating the exchanges. And then I don't know, like people could donate or something so that it could like help raise some funds for like low income people's food and stuff like that. And I've really been thinking, I like picked up something from a friend's place and noticed they had a backyard, and I got really excited because it was south facing, and I was like, you know, there's a lot of space, like people's backyards, university campuses, nobody's going to be on those, you know, like they shut down school. So like I'm pretty sure we should be doing like mass scale like gardening of these green spaces, you know, like maybe like systemically we could convince universities to do so, would be really cool, but like but what's more likely is like on a smaller scale convincing like people in the community to have like open up their backyards and like maybe even let, you know, like at risk or like recently housed youth like tend to the gardens. Because I feel like a lot of people like myself, and like I'm not a youth anymore even, are like, you know, struggling for some kind of a purpose, you know, like just waking up at like 4 a.m., just like smoking weed, playing video games, you know, just like not really having consistency in their life, and just something that would do that. And it would feel like really helpful to just like have the food, you know, like it could help the people who not go to the grocery stores, who let their gardens go in the backyard. And like it could help the youth and just like create a micro food supply, I guess, for people to access. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Oh wait, no. And I just want to point out like that in addition to like people not having enough money to live in the hotels, like when I was homeless, I basically relied on places like Starbucks and Tim Hortons and malls and whatever, not just for like Wi-Fi and stuff as previously mentioned, but like for water, for bathrooms, and like where are these people's needs, you know, like they probably have to buy bottled water. Like it's not really a sustainable or like a financially sustainable solution for the people who have to like buy it on the streets, especially with like much less foot traffic and people being less likely to give like, you know, like kick down some change because they're afraid they're going to catch COVID from a panhandler or something stupid. I mean, I guess it's valid. It's like a crisis and a pandemic, but yeah, I think I'm done.
Amazing. Thank you, Stu. I am totally on board with some gardening activism and taking over people's backyards. Thank you so much to everyone. Like, I think that really got at so many things. And I think, like so many discussions with people with lived experience, it really brought in like what is going on the ground, but also like what are the systemic pieces that we have to be looking at. I know that we have some questions already, and I think anyone now, I also know there's some people who are listening in who are doing amazing work around this stuff, so feel free to jump in if you want to share something based on what folks have been talking about, or more questions. I think for me, I really want to emphasize, I think with Marcelle starting it off, but everyone echoing this need for like emotional support and care and love, while also bringing resistance into that and thinking of like these opportunities Mardi was talking about that can seem really hard to wrap your head around right now with everything that's going on and everyone's individual struggles, and some were more than others or differently than others. But I think like demanding accountability while also doing it ourselves when we need to is really, really important work that it sounds like folks are doing. I'm going to go back through all of these comments. Does anyone have like immediate questions for folks, or want to like have a burning comment that you want to jump in with?
I would like to say something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really like touched by everyone. I just really want to say that I was like, wow, taking in all of that. But I realized that there's like a little bit of a divide in the way that we want to make our like knowledge accessible. I always feel like that's like an inner battle, and I feel like all of y'all navigated that not that conflict, but this issue really well. That there's some very complex issues that we're tackling with, but I still always want them to make them like accessible in a way that people digest them, even if they're very hard. And so that was like one of the things that I wanted to applaud. Everyone's really doing an incredible job at that. And thank you, Jayne, for facilitating that. And the other thing that I wanted to say is I really hope that within this context, there are ways in which I think you're all caretakers and you're all like healers in some ways, and that you're also finding healing for yourselves and taking time to take care of yourselves, and reach out, and if that's a need, because that, yeah, y'all are just heroes, and that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Marcelle. I think that's so important. I also agree. I think there's also something about the work that we're doing now that also was work that a lot of us were doing beforehand. Like in a lot of our communities, it's not really new to be facing this kind of like, need for community care and need for solidarity, and also a need to be pushing back. What support do supporters need? Yeah, that's a good question. I know Mohammed had a question about like what does a systemic change need to look like? I think that that's a huge question and something that we can discuss. But I also think Aaron's question, what support do supporters need? Like that's something I would love to hear more on, and I think echoes Marcelle's point. Like is there things that people are finding that tangibly is helping them like do their work right now, or that they are totally missing? Because I think has been also like a catch up in a lot of organizational responses and stuff, where it's like, because we don't know what's going on, we don't know what we're fucking up until it's too late, which is always, I guess, also a bit of it. But yeah, are there any supports people have really been relying on in their work? Or is there something allies can be doing that they might not be thinking of doing?
I think for me, I've been relying a lot on peers. Like Stu's talked me off the ledge at least once since COVID started, and same like having Avery and the other kids, as I call them, around. Like they're really great supports. And what's nice about our relationship, I think, even though sometimes they might see me as sort of a professional, but not a professional is the wrong word, but like a formal support, just because I'm there so often. But it's not, in the sense that we can be so honest with each other, even though we do lie to each other sometimes. But that we can get mad at each other, we can like totally break down in front of each other, and there's not that sense of, oh my god, I've failed them because they've seen me weak and broken. It's actually like becomes a source of strength for all of us, I think, to move forward through those kinds of things together. And that's just what's been most helpful to me, is definitely having people like Avery and Stu in my life, and Jayne, obviously, and all of the lived experience scholars network.
I really like my dog. My dog's been keeping me company. I don't know if we could just get everybody pets and support their pets, if that's an option. But
I support the motion to give everyone dogs.
I agree with that. I have like 2 cats, an axolotl, a goldfish, a betta fish, and a snail. So pets are awesome.
I just got my first pet because of COVID.
It's been Jayne and my rats for me.
Oh, rats.
So Jayne and my rats, I would not make it. And now I don't have the rats.
Hey, can I ask
To be left behind in Montreal.
You'll see them again. Hey, Elizabeth.
Hi, I'd love to ask a question.
Yeah.
Because Marty, you said don't waste a crisis, right? And yes, we're working like really hard now because we know how important caregivers are, right? And that's what we've really said today. Peer supporters are caregivers. So what about, like Reshma mentioned too, like changing the way staff are trained to work in shelters so that they can have language of peer supporters, to have that caring, connecting, tangible kind of stuff that we know is needed. I don't know if there's something around that kind of introduction that we could keep this going, this caremongering and reaching out to each other, like you talked about so beautifully, Stu, and everything.
I have a question back at you, Elizabeth. Sorry, it's bad to answer your question with a question, but it's
complicated, Marty.
Yeah.
I don't understand you. I love it. I just don't understand it.
I appreciate what you're saying. I think my initial reaction was that there's a lot of research dollars out there right now that are COVID related and homelessness and shelter. So what question do you think we should be asking in those research grants?
Oh, thank you so much for that one. I am wondering if we can make peer support training a standard for the shelter system, I suppose, so that all staff are trained in it. I know we're supposed to be all trained in trauma-informed care, right? But that doesn't happen. And it's mandated by the cities. So that's in Toronto, right? Yeah, research, like we know peer support works in the US and the UK. We know how evident it is for saving lives, like from opioid overdoses and getting people, housed fast and getting them out of that revolving door of recidivism. So, let's look to those places. The US is our leaders. The mental health sector, yeah, absolutely, in Canada. But the US and the UK have it all going on in multi-sectors, right? In all the organizations. So that would be my wish, that we turn to their lead and take it into Canada.
I have a little thought. I want to be able. Sorry, you guys. My mind is a little bit scattered as well today, so I'm trying to stay focused and clear. But there are a lot of models as well. Like I'm gonna post also Yes for Humanity, which is a global youth-led organization that was actually funded by a former youth in care who was gone through homelessness and who saw that there would be precarity with global warming, and now pandemics were also like something that we were thinking about, especially for like heightened migration movements. And then homelessness, for instance, in France is tightly connected to the migrant movements of youth who are part of the child welfare system. So one of the things that I think, I'm trying to also answer to your question, Elizabeth, one of the things that I feel is a big issue around homelessness, for me, it took like years, not decades, to be able to come out of the closet of homelessness. And I've still this year, as a graduate student and someone who is considered as a success story, I've lived through many like housing precarious situations. So it's not over even when it's supposed to be over. But I feel like there's no face. Like we need a branding without putting the weight of homelessness on someone's shoulder. And I think that something that we could do all for ourselves, like there's certain issues, as much as, and I don't want to sound inhumane, but there's certain issues that are more popular in the collective consciousness, and like, oh no, the poor babies in this part of the world, and of course everyone deserves dignity, but seemingly homeless folks don't deserve as much dignity as anyone else. So I feel like a way of like kind of hammering into the collective consciousness that we exist is to have a voice that is not that doesn't instrumentalize the lived experience, but kind of becomes like this powerful, I'm down for the revolution, I'm down to kind of like collectivize our experiences and make them less heavy, because I do think we need that step and that separation of being able to tell our stories even at times when we're living them. So to me, research could help do that. It could help kind of like carry the weight of like the branding, and I don't know how else to say it right now, but you might be able to come up with a better term of homelessness, because it is invisibilized. And initially when I came up with like the care packages, I didn't know what was the current situation. I just felt it like in my gut, like I need to do something about that. And then I ended up getting some stats, and I am also on the table, interministerial table, to fight homelessness, the action plan for 2021 in Quebec. And the disconnect is surreal. Like, I mean, surreal. Like things like it takes 7 different forms to change the bathroom that isn't working in the BNQ, and it takes I don't know how many weeks for additional beds to come in, or beds are taken out when we know that we need more. So like the what is being said by the public ministry and how it's being enacted, there's like too much of a divide, and I feel like research can be that branding and that tool, so we don't have to collapse under the weight of that. So yeah, that was all.
Yes. Thank you. I love that, because I think I get into a space where I'm like, research is not doing that right now. Research can be incredibly inaccessible. Research can be objectifying. Research can be so many really violent things, but it doesn't have to be. And I think that playing that role, because what was very clear to me at the onset of this was that the city here in Montreal, but I think elsewhere, and also like didn't know what homeless folks needed, and still doesn't. And we're like, we'll do this maybe. So if there was actually like ethical research to be able to bridge some of that, that would be great. There's a question, mainstream media institutionally backed political groups that drive austerity cuts. How do we push the youth's voice into mainstream outlets that help us advocate for a Green New Deal that leaves no one behind? How do we push for evidence-based research to become more intertwined with public briefing or news? And yeah, I think like these questions get at that divide between like do-it-yourself kind of mutual aid, and also trying to push at the systems and structures that are organizing all of our experiences. Does anyone?
I've been thinking about it, and I've been thinking about for a while how we need to have like a lived X led like media outlet to like represent our own stories, because a lot of the time, even when you engage with the mainstream media, they're highly fetishizing, and like it's a demeaning experience for a lot of people. Like apparently I speak quite well at times, and someone interrupted me to ask me how much of an education I had, and that just seems stupid. Like it was annoying. Like it was a crappy experience, and I wouldn't wish it on like other people. And I think like a lot of the time, like they use the information that we have to paint like a picture that doesn't really accurately represent what we're trying to get across, and is just more about what people want to believe about us and what people want to hear, and it's not really helpful to the process. So I'd say like, yeah, like get like YouTube channels, like podcasts, like put us in charge, like put the youth in charge, like get the message out there, like engage with like the research actively, and like put the research to stories, and just like bridge the gap between anecdotal evidence and like research-based evidence.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's great. I wanted to acknowledge Mohammed's earlier question and then spin off of Stu. In terms of systemic changes in I guess, the not homelessness part of healthcare, so the mental health sector, closely intertwined. Something that's come up that I've been hearing in other panels like this is that young people are taking advantage of the non-traditional appointment in-person system. And I thought this was really interesting because, for example, like texting your clients, let's not even talk about how long it took to get there, right? And now it's definitely mandatory, right? That you need to check in somehow, you need to use electronics, we need to find a safe way to do this. And I just think that when you're looking at systems change now, there's, again, an opportunity to say, hey, this is normal. Some people are in fact engaging better, knowing that they don't have to show up. Some people are actually engaging with their care now and making strides that they were not able to make before. And on the other side, something I would love to look forward. I don't have an answer, but is to see how we can change access to resources, insofar as making it low barrier. Of course, before pandemic, we thought low barrier was coming in person, like you have no technology, let's just show up. I think it's interesting now to say, what does low barrier look like? I think that's a new question that can be answered when we're looking at the future. And I got so lost in my sauce again, I forgot what I wanted to say after what Stu said, but Stu said really great stuff, so I second all of it.
Yeah, no, Stu, you said some amazing things, and that actually triggered something in me, which was the question in regards to like involving more young people's voices in the media. I always have a love-hate relationship with that idea, mainly because in our society, because it's so capitalist based, that unless you have a traditional success story, no one actually cares. And it's so disappointing that we're still in that place. Like, unless a young person or a peer expert or someone is willing to share their story, and for them, success could be, like, for example, for me, my success is the fact that I can actually get out of bed every morning and not want to die. That, to me, that's my success. But if I share that story, a lot of people are not going to relate to it, or they're not going to care. They're going to want to hear, oh, she went to school, she got her degrees, she got a good job, she now has full-time work and has her own apartment. And that's not the reality. And unless we can keep finding ways to make sure people understand that there's no one success, it looks very different for everyone. I've always been hesitant on putting more young people's voices in the media. I feel like sometimes it can be a setup where we push them back into a traditional spiral where they think their success needs to match other people's. And yeah.
I totally agree, Reshma. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think with so many of these things, in theory, it could look really good if it weren't for capitalism or other forces that make these spaces really violent for a lot of young people. We have 10 minutes left. We can always keep talking if we want. I've stopped letting people in unless I know them, Caitlin. But I kind of want to try to do something a bit different. I know you've all said such amazing things, but maybe to wrap it up, I would love to hear from some other folks who haven't spoken yet of what their thoughts were, or if they have any reflections, or if this, brought up anything that they wanted to share in the last 9 minutes.
Just to add to the end, like I don't think you mean me though, right? Who didn't speak?
Yeah,
you don't mean me. Oh, okay.
I mean, you haven't spoken that much.
Just to add onto that, like I agree with everything like that you both said. Like as far as the tension between wanting to be in the media to affect change and then not wanting youth to be exploited, and then versus what Stu's saying, which is like we just need to fucking have our own outlets. But like, and I agree with that, we need to have our own outlets. But then the question is, how do we get people to actually listen to those anyways, right? Like if we make a podcast, who other than everybody say who already joined this call is going to listen to it, right? How do you get people to care who otherwise wouldn't care? How do you get people who like who commented on it about how the media outlet usually backs austerity measures or whatever, however you phrase that. Like how do you get people who care about austerity to care about homeless people? And I think one thing that COVID is doing, and it's a sick benefit, is what Stu already mentioned, like the discourse around it is creating homeless people as a public health hazard, which might actually affect positive change in a sick way, because now it's considered they're a public health risk instead of, we're not doing it out of kindness, we're doing it out of the risk to ourselves. But I'm just wondering if anyone has ideas of how to actually convince people who care about quite the opposite of homelessness to actually care about it.
Can I answer? I think, Charlotte, that question, bomb, because I'm old, this, it keeps me up at night, and I'm optimistic. I am optimistic that people do in fact care, but it's, as Marcelle pointed out, as Stu's been pointing out, as everyone's been pointing out, it's about making that face tangible and close to home. I don't think it comes down to necessarily pushing more young people to the forefront. I think one way to do it is to take the people at the top and bring them back down to the grass. So everyone has a story. We know this, just broadly, homeless or not, we all have stories. I think something that culturally as a sector would make a major difference is becoming friends with the corporate sector. Becoming friends with, it's so touchy, I know, it's like, oh God, like, but there are those champions out there, right? It's like, it's sickening. You know, you have a campaign like Bell Let's Talk. At the end of the day, they did something good. How they got there, that's all I can say, you know, but stopping stigma starts with, you know, having a conversation, and who has the power to mobilize those conversations? The corporate folks. We all buy their phones, you know, like, just, if it's Rogers, if it's Bell, if it's whoever, I think there's opportunities there, that it takes the right people. Unfortunately, we can't just, you know, take our favorite young person and be like, hey, you can change this person's mind. That's not ethical, right? But it can take people like ourselves, who are confident enough to have this conversation over Zoom and get Zoom bombed, you know, and put it all out there. I had to call it out because it's true. Like, this is a small sample of what could happen out there in the world as soon as we release this information. And look, we carried on, you know, and we're having something meaningful here. So I don't know, I'm optimistic that people do want to change, and it's about making that face of hidden homelessness normal. And fortunately and unfortunately, that starts with education about how many, I think with the new Without a Home survey results coming out, there's a massive opportunity there to say, hey, you thought it was like this, but 1, 2, 3, 4, however many people in this class will probably face homelessness, and that will make people think differently.
I was thinking like we'd probably have to do like something outrageous and like kind of like self-exploit. I've had a few ridiculous like film promotional ideas. In Ottawa, there's like Confederation Park, and it's got this big fountain. And I always wanted to just like film doing your laundry there to make a point of like the difficulty that you face trying to like do simple tasks like clean your clothes at all and stuff like that while on the streets, and just, you know, like weird things like that. And like, oh, if you get like arrested for doing it and it's on film, like think of like Jackass and Tom Green, like how much like popularity that stuff had. Imagine. And like I've been doing that dumb stuff on the street like just for like shits and giggles, you know, and like it was fun when I was like younger, and now I'm like I could do the same stuff and basically just like raise awareness. And it kind of like messes with like the preconceived like perceptions that people have of homelessness, and kind of like juxtaposes like the issues into the forefront as well. And if like we have, you know, like our own media to explain these actions and stuff like that, then when the media, like the mainstream media, like reaches out to us, we have like a podcast to plug, you know, we have like a YouTube channel with our messaging, and they're just basically advertising it and putting their spin on it.
If I could just add to the media component, I'm so sorry.
No, go for it.
So in regards to the divide of, you know, wanting austerity cuts or portraying the homelessness for what it really is, I think the media actually does a very good job at manipulating our views, in the sense that the way we look at crime, they'll sort of, you know, say this person got injured or hurt or unfortunately killed, and, you know, we solved the problem by locking them up. And I think if we were to and that sort of puts the mentality that these are individual problems and not systematic issues. So if we use the power of the media to show that, you know, these are actually institutional problems and not something based on, you know, an individual issue, or, you know, arresting someone won't stop the next crime from happening as much as we would like to think it would. And, you know, these measures don't work anymore. So I think that's the step we kind of need to take to actually show that arresting really doesn't stop anything, or, yeah, so thinking along those lines. And And there's a lot of power building among the youth, because in Toronto, I bet there was 50 to 100,000 people at the climate strike, and they're all very aware of, what's going on. And Toronto is actually going to be very hardly hit by any climate disasters because the sea levels have been rising. So it's just about almost changing these views. Like even when our politicians say we need to reduce the deficit, and that's why we need to make cuts to the public sectors, that's not logically true, because from 2010 to 2017, Toronto Star released a report saying the largest corporations missed out on $10 billion worth of tax every year. So they avoided $10 billion worth of tax every year, and that almost combined takes care of every provincial deficit. So just to say that we need to reduce the deficit, or it almost manipulates people's views and opinions to thinking these are different problems, and we're not really focusing on really what's happening in our community. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna give people, like, if you're needing to go, and thank everyone so much for such an amazing discussion. There are so many things. I have like a paper just full of all of your amazing thoughts that I will, and if you have links to things that you shared, I know Marcelle, Mardi, anyone else who wants to share things, maybe in the chat, and then I can send them out on Facebook or Twitter. And anyone who wants to stick around, I'm going to stay. So thank you also everyone for joining. Hopefully this will be the first of many conversations. I think there's so many important things that we tackled. I think there's so many important things we could still talk about. But yeah.
No, thank you for hosting the space for this.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you, Jayne. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And hopefully I will not let this person in unless we wanted to experience some unfortunate Zoom bomb again.
I was whack.
That's,
Wow.
yeah.
Who are you?
I was so confused because I didn't even hear him, and all of a sudden I just saw a dick on my screen, and I was like, "What the hell?"
Was there a dick?
Profile picture of a guy wearing a penis hat.
Oh, I didn't even see shit. I just heard it and was like, I normally also don't use the waiting room at all because it's like annoying. So I'm really glad that I did, because I think after that, like 5 or 6 people were like, bow, 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 bow. So moving forward, security on Zoom is something to be thinking about. Yeah, thank you.
Keeps the police
I'm
away.
sorry, Avery. Also, like I sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. It was. I didn't even hear him. I just saw a random dick on my screen, and yeah.
One with the punches.
Yeah. All right.
Ooh.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, chat soon. Marcelle, I'll definitely, keep us posted on this upcoming media thing.
Yes, I will. Digital platform and all of the initiatives and the campaigns that you're putting together, the projects can actually be shared. So let's say someone is doing something this incredible in another part of the world, there are ways of finding bridges, but also even funding. So join. I will send like all of the information, but y'all are just absolutely incredible, and I'm like, I want to be friends with you all.